What if I would prove to you that the Manx Norton not only won more races in its 12-year production, propelled many racers into stardom more than any other motorcycle in history, it not only won the hearts of motorcyclists but created a motorcycle culture that lives on to this day. Stick around while I put this storied motorcycle, its developers and riders into perspective. This is essentially a love story, and how a motorcycle, a pedigreed racing machine named after the famous Isle of Man TT race. A motorcycle named after the residents of the Isle of Man, where they are referred to as Manx. Every year in late May to early June, for 13 days, they close down the streets, and they call it a festival, where all the riders ride through all the villages, tight turns, little goosenecks, switchbacks, and they all have to be taken over there by ferry. It's an island, and it's quite a commotion when so many people are crowding onto the island for that 2 weeks. Previous to the Manx moniker, the CS1 racing motor single overhead cam was designed and developed by Norton chief engineer Walter Moore from 27 to 30. It was typical British long-stroke engine for the time, but with a single overhead cam driven by a bevel shaft. After it won the Isle of Man TT that year, Arthur Carroll and Joe Craig took over design, and in 38 gave us the double overhead cam or double knocker, keeping the 79 by 100cc bore and stroke, but later designs kept pushing that square bore design and beyond what we know today. The motor that at the time didn't take on the moniker Manx until 1948. The Manx engine, however, was raced and developed over the years along with the racing chassis of the day until the frame and girder fork was first replaced in 1948 by hydraulic front forks. Thanks to World War II technology, however, it was sporting a rear floating hub suspension, which wasn't keeping pace with the motor technology and horsepower that the motor was offering up. In fact, from its birth in 1950 until the mid-60s, it dominated road racing worldwide. Even after Norton dropped sponsorship in 1962, however, privateers campaigned and carry on winning big races. The successful rise was due to evolving the engine technology, going to a shorter stroke, larger bore, leading to a higher revving lower end, and improving top ends, cams, sodium-filled valves, and tuning to enhance performance, keeping them in the game, far exceeding their frame geometry. From 62 on, privateers were still breathing more horsepower, keeping them competitive, where they go on to win vintage races. Being held back by a single backbone plunger frame, comically referred to as the garden gate, it was a compromise to a hardtail rear frame. A couple clever Irish brothers, Rex and Cromie McCandless, came up with a revolutionary frame design in 1950 and sold the design to Norton. So revolutionary that all other subsequent frames most racers from that time forward used, and production motorcycles adapted, the double loop or duplex frame. It had been introduced with a swinging rear fork or swing arm built from lightweight, strong 520 Reynolds tubing, supported by sprung shock absorbers. This earned it the nickname Featherbed. That frame completely changed the landscape for bike design to that point. The importance of that was not lost on manufacturers or anyone else that raced bikes. If you think about it like we would about professional sports players, the successful racers of the day were held as heroes as we do our sports heroes. The names of the riders we regarded as significant as the bikes they rode. Often riders got hired by rival motorcycle manufacturers, which would earn the ire of dedicated fans, but they were basically hired guns or mercenaries after all. They were risking their lives. Names like Artie Bell, Jeff Duke, Phil Reed, Mike Halewood, Sammy Miller, Derek Minter, Jimmy Simpson, Harold Daniel, Jimmy Guthrie, Les Archer Jr., and more actually launched a racing career on the Manx. They then went on to join other factory teams as multi-cylinder bikes would rule the day, but they all teethed on the Manx Norton. unlike other race bikes that became outgunned, second-hand Manxes fell into the willing hands of privateers and up-and-coming racers. After the market and spares industry kept breathing on the motors with high-tech CNC tooling, which not only kept tolerances tight and technically advanced, you can still purchase a brand new Manx. And believe it or not, bring your wallet.
Make me want to lead. Of course.
Is this recording?
Yeah.
We should talk.
in the early 60s when the Manxes were winning all their races. All of the youth of those days were building cafe racers from stock Norton road-going frames with big Triumph twins or anything they could stuff into that frame. They called themselves rockers and raced against the clock with each other, basically on dares. It wasn't long before British lads, whose fathers and mothers fought in World War II, took up the sport and choked the motorways in Britain, occupying cafes and truck stops, dressed in leathers like the race heroes of the day. Curiously, if you look at these old photos of these bikes that they were building, you'll notice that most of the gas tanks were either the Sprint Manx Norton tank or a Manx TT tank, which was pretty popular back those days. They had the aluminum welding skills from World War II aerospace. Everything they could lighten up on their bikes was handcrafted and made of aluminum. They really bear a great resemblance to the Manx racers. That brings me to a point that I promised I'd make earlier. Just take a look at what was going on then. You guys had souped their bikes up so they could do 100 miles an hour, and they'd brag about doing the ton. That was a big thing back then. They'd drop a nickel in the jukebox and go to a certain point, and by the time they got back, if they made it in a certain amount of time, they would have had to do the ton. A lot of people died. Some of those boys paid the ultimate price for being in the Ton Up Club. There was even a resurgence in the early to mid-2000s where people would drag their grandpa's old Honda out of the barn and start stripping it down and turning it into a cafe racer. Curiously enough, if you look at my channel, you'll see that I had an aluminum fabrication company during the time that this resurgence took place. And about 80% of all the gas tanks that I made were Manx tanks. And all the motorcycle companies have a cafe racer in their lineup. They're still as popular as ever. I don't know about you, but I sort of sum this up as the Manx was responsible for bringing this motorcycle culture forward, and it still lives on today in the design of many of the cafe racer bikes that are out there. Thank you, Manx Norton.